Okay, welcome to another episode of Rev Mio TV. Rev Mio TV. Um, Make sure that you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and add a comment. Add a comment. Add a comment. Everything helps the algorithm. We have a young lady here with us today who was born in the South, um, and I'm going to let her pick up her story from here. Can you tell us exactly when you were born, ma'am?
I was born December the 6th, 1946, in Marietta, Georgia. I was the seventh of 8 children born to Horace and Ernestine Slade.
Okay, so 1946, Marietta, Georgia. Marietta being right outside of Atlanta, Georgia, correct?
Yes, about 20 miles north of Atlanta. Well, actually, I can't say I experienced tension. We knew our place and we knew what to and what not to do. Well, we could not sit at the lunch counter in McClellan's uh, store. We knew we couldn't sit at the lunch counter at Dunaway drugstores. That was a hot dog place. I can't remember the name of it. But at any rate, we knew our place and we stayed in that place.
Okay, so there was like boundaries, is what you're saying. Certain places you could go, some places you couldn't go, and some places you could go, but then inside that establishment there was restrictions.
Yes, like the Strand Theater. We couldn't go in the front. We had to go in the side door, which the side door would take us up uh, several flights of stairs to the balcony. And what they didn't realize was that we had the best seats in the house. Even though we had to go in the side door, we had very good seats in the movie theater, in the Strand Theater.
Okay, okay. So what about, say, your parents? Can you tell me a little bit about your mother and your father?
Um, my mother was a very, a highly intelligent woman. She was an excellent mother, a very, very strict mother. Uh, we didn't we didn't decide whether we went to church or not. You know, it was Sunday morning. You knew you were going to church. Mama didn't send us to Sunday school. She took us.
Mm-hmm.
And me and Priscilla and Gloria, we would walk down uh,
These two are
Ford
your
Street.
sisters.
Yeah, Gloria was the youngest. Priscilla was a year older than me. We would walk down Lemon Street. I'm sorry, walk down Ford Street to Cole. We would go down Cole Street to Lemon. We would walk up Lemon Street to Zion,
Mm-hmm.
and that was just routine. And you did, even if Mama for some reason didn't go to church, we followed that routine, going and coming from church. We belonged to Zion. Our daddy belonged to Turner Chapel, though uh, he wasn't a regular in the church scene. He was a general laborer. As I understand it, he started out as a chauffeur when he came to Marietta from Pike County, and he just became a general laborer, a handyman,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. And that's the only thing he ever did. He worked for the same family, mm, same two families. as long as I can remember, up until his death.
So during your childhood, did you ever witness or hear of, maybe from one of your other close family members, your parents maybe being disrespected in some kind of way by some of the white people in the community or elsewhere?
Yes. um, One incident that stands out in my mind was Mama was coming from Aunt Temp's house, Ursuline Adams, who lived down on East Fort Street. She was walking home, and it was about dusk dark, and she was alone, and some white boys, for some reason, decided to harass Mama. And as she walked along, they broke uh, drink bottles, glass bottles, at her heels, at the back of her feet. And she didn't stop. She didn't talk. Then it was called talking back, even though they were teenagers or younger white boys, as she described them. And as she walked along, they continued to bust bottles at her heels. And when she got home, she had cuts on the back of her heels and her legs. And that's just the kind of treatment, they were allowed to get away with during uh, those times. It was just, you knew you had to wait in line as long as there was a white person that was there. You knew that they had to go in ahead of you, which was no bother. Or um,
So it was just kind of the protocol of those days.
yeah, oh yeah,
Not that it was right, but it
it was
was.
just the way it was.
Hmm.
It was the norm.
Okay, so what about school? Can you tell me? Can you tell us a little bit about your school days as it relates to your books and study materials and stuff like that? Because you went to an all black school. It was during segregation.
Yeah, I always said that there's a reason, there are a number of contributing factors as to why blacks were somewhat behind white children academically, because we studied, I would call it second rate material, because the books that we studied out uh, were books that they would have names in them from like Keith Elementary, or I can't think of the name of the other schools, but the white kids would get the new books with materials that was current or up to date, and we would get their books. Sometimes pages would be missing out of the books or
Mm.
whatever, but that's the kind of, one of the things that stand out in my mind about our school days.
Okay, so after school, you graduated from high school, and then what was your next step in life from there?
I graduated high school, and then I went into the military, into the Navy. So I left Marietta and went to boot camp at Bainbridge, Maryland.
So now you being a country girl from the South and going up to Maryland, then what kind of change did you experience?
Well, actually, the time in Maryland, actually, all of the time in Maryland was at the training facility itself. I didn't actually experience um, growing, or my um, moving into adulthood until I was stationed in Norfolk, Virginia. And even in the military, um, there was no difference. That was 1964. You still experienced discrimination at a high level. I can remember I had a chief named Chief Mosley. She was from Alabama, and she was just as nasty
No,
towards blacks. And
she was a white woman.
yes, she was a white woman, and her name was Chief Mosley, and she was just as she was prejudiced. She
Okay. So let me see. After the military, um, I know that you went on and you had kids and stuff like that, but you also participated in, was it a march in Forsyth County, Georgia, or some kind of rally for what was it, for black rights, or what was it about?
it was that was Hosea Williams and uh, a group of other participants went to Forsyth because Forsyth, Georgia was known as a city that did not want blacks to live there. They they didn't want black homeowners. They didn't want blacks, period. And so Hosea Williams and I can't remember the exact number, but they went to Forsyth and they were um, rocks thrown at them. They were cursed at, and the when others heard about what happened to Hosea Williams, a march was organized, and if I'm not mistaken, it was a very short time after, maybe within a week or so, Hosea went back to Forsyth, Georgia, and I had decided, yeah, I'm going to join too. So uh, myself and my niece, I believe it was Gwen, we joined the march. It was really enlightening. I had expected a good number of participants in that march, but I was just absolutely amazed at the numbers that actually showed up um, in protest of the way the Hosea Williams and his followers were treated in
Now,
Forsyth, Georgia.
I remember being a kid at that time, and I remember seeing it on the news. I remember it being national news. That all the different major news channels was covering the
Yes,
event, and
yes.
Hosea Williams, he was a strong advocate for black rights. He was involved in the
Mm-hmm.
civil rights movement, and I remember as a kid, I must have been probably maybe 11, 12 years old, and I remember seeing a large number of black people on their TV screen
Mm-hmm.
marching, for black people's rights in Forsyth County, Georgia.
Mm-hmm.
And it's
Mm-hmm.
just, remarkable to be able to talk to somebody and to know somebody that took place in such a in such a great movement.
Yes, it was. It was a highlight of my life, actually, to have taken part in that march. It goes back to when I was a teenager, and we had a pastor at Zion. His name was Reverend Jesse Cook, and Reverend Cook was a big man in stature, but he had a way with young people, and he organized. We had a club. I hate to say club. It was an organized by Reverend Cook called the Top Team Club. But anyway, Reverend Cook was uh, one that had started along with at the same time rather with Frank Sexton and Booney Christian. Those are only two names that I can remember. But anyway, they had started kind of sitting in the lunch counters at McClellan's and, oh, well, around the square in Marietta. And Reverend Cook had started taking the small children to the park up on the square where they had a park. They had swings and little things for small children to ride, but black children were not allowed on those swings and everything. And all the teenagers just loved Reverend Cook because he took such an interest in teenagers, young folks. And I had to have been he baptized me in 1955, so I had to have been 9. So Reverend Cook was probably at Zion from the time from somewhere around 1954, 55. But at any rate, just all of a sudden, just Reverend Cook wasn't there. Reverend Cook wasn't preaching. Reverend Cook wasn't attending any of the top teen events. And we didn't know what happened to Reverend Cook. We couldn't understand it as young people. And my mama, it seemed like it was a hush around whatever was going on with him. And mama told me, she said, Reverend Cook won't be coming back to Zion because the white people, the white establishments, didn't like Reverend Cook because he was a troublemaker, and that the bankers and the business people around the square in Marietta had told the Zion officiates that if they didn't get rid of Reverend Cook, they didn't get rid of Reverend Cook, they were going to call in the note on Zion.
So
And
basically, so basically, the white community leaders and the bank, the white bank officials threatened the church and told the church that they need to get rid of this black pastor because they didn't like him. They felt like he was a troublemaker because
mm-hmm,
basically he was pro-black.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And so they said, if y'all don't get rid of this pastor, then we're going to pull back the note. In other words, we're going to find a way to make this church go into foreclosure and things of that nature.
They call it. I think Mama used the term. They were gonna call in the note on Zion, which means the same thing that you're saying, but that's the term she used, and that's why Reverend they had to get rid of Reverend Cook.
Hmm.